Hi, my name is Sam Scheinbach, and this is my project from the Environment Lab at West Virginia University, done in collaboration with Dr. S, titled Ground Contact Actuated Foot and Claw System for a Robot Leg Locomotion on Inclined Terrain. Let's start with some background on the problem and the inspiration behind the project. This is Drosophila II, a hexapod robot built in the Environment Lab and modeled after the fruit fly Drosophila melanogaster. Right now, each leg ends in a rigid rubber tarsal tip, essentially a simple passive foot that just sits on the ground. That rigid foot is a limitation this project is trying to solve. To understand why the robot is modeled after a fly, it helps to look at the actual anatomy of the Drosophila leg. Each leg has a series of joints connecting the coxa, femur, and tibia down to the tarsus at the very end. In real flies, the tarsus isn't just a rigid foot, it actually grips and releases the surface with every step, which is exactly the kind of behavior for Drosophila II. The video on the right depicts the Drosophila walking pattern. Let's walk through the design. Here is a look at the actual mechanism. On the left, you can see the version of the leg with the claw and cabling visible. In the middle, cross-sectional CAD view showing the leg housing. There is a compliant silicone joint at the ankle, a cable that wrapped down to the claw's pivot point, and internal component including the small solenoid. On the right, you can see the leg being 3D printed on the Markforged printer, printing in onyx filament, and the finished printed part before the silicone joint was cast in. The key idea here is that the whole system is passive. There's no motor actively closing the claw, and so the ground contact itself drives the mechanism. This sequence shows exactly how that works step by step. As the leg approaches the ground, the claw starts in open position. When the foot makes contact and the robot's body weight loads the leg, that compliant silicone joint at the ankle deflects. That deflection pulls a cable connected to the claw's pivot point, which passively closes the claw, no motor required. This then holds the claw shut for the rest of the stance phase. When it's time for the foot to lift again, a solenoid fires a brief pulse to release that cable and resets the claw back to the open position. Next is the testing apparatus and the overall results. This is the setup mounted vertically above a force plate, which sits on a sliding rail system. The idea is straightforward. Using a vertical mount, the leg is pressed down onto the surface, then sliding the plate horizontally underneath it. As the plate slides, the claw or the bare foot in the no claw condition eventually loses grip and slips. The force plate measures the forces in all directions throughout the entire event, which captures the peak resistance force right before slip occurs. Across 3 different substrate types, the experiment was performed to see how the claw performs on different kinds of terrain, those being loose rocks, wood mulch, and loose soil. Each condition with the claw and without it was run for 10 trials per surface for a reliable average and account for trial-to-trial variability. Here are the main results. On the left is peak shear force compared to the claw and no claw across all 3 surfaces. As you can see, the claw condition in blue consistently outperformed the no claw in orange across gravel, mulch, and soil, increasing peak shear resistance anywhere from 35 to 80% depending on the surface. On the right is the traction coefficient. Essentially, this is the ratio of the shear force to the normal or downward force being applied. Interestingly, this metric actually favors no claw across all 3 surfaces. This could be mainly due to the claw mechanism requiring a larger normal force to fully engage and close before it can start sliding at all. So while it grips harder in absolute terms, it needs more downward loading to get there. Next, where does this project go from here? To summarize, the claw mechanism increased peak shear resistance across every surface we tested. Through that came with a lower shear to normal force ratio, consistent with the claw needing more normal loading to fully engage. Looking ahead, the next steps are to integrate this passive claw onto Drosophila 2's real leg and verify that it reliably engages and releases across a full walking step cycle. Also wanting to characterize the relationship between joint stiffness and claw closing force. And finally, being able to incorporate sensory feedback from the claw itself to help with the robot adopt its gait in real time on complex terrain. Lastly, this work is supported by NSF Award through the RU site for undergraduate robotics research for Appalachia. I'd like to thank the members of the Nermit Lab for their guidance and technical insight throughout this project. Thank you.